Aloha everyone, my name is Daniel Ronan, student at the University of California, Santa Barbara and retail specialist. And for a long time I can finally say this, welcome back to another retail case study. It has been a while since last month, haven't seen you all since last year, haha. um, but just wanted to say happy holidays, happy new year, and I hope everyone is safe and well due to the new surge in the Omicron variant for COVID-19. So everyone is safe and well from the virus. And of course, welcome back to another case study. Today we will be researching about Payless ShoeSource. Um, I believe most of you watching know what a Payless is. Payless was the largest family footwear outlet in the United States at one point. However, they have diminished from the retail market and now have no stores. Well, surprise, surprise, there is a store. We will cover it at the end of the slideshow, but we'll be covering Payless, the rise and demise, and hopefully another rise in the retail outlet in the near future. So let's go right at it. All right, so here's the table contents for our retail case study for today. So we have our, of course, introduction to the case study. What is Payless ShoeSource USA? They are an international company with different companies that are operating the retail outlets in countries such as the Philippines, I believe, and in South America. But we will be primarily going over the United States branch for today. Their small beginnings and growth, more growth and rebranding, the main department stores era, even more rebranding and further expansion, struggles, reconstruction, and focus in the 21st century, continued struggles and bankruptcies in the late 2010s, liquidation of Payless, emergence as e-commerce seller and reopening, and the ultimate conclusion. So it is a mouthful, but we'll go through each slide surely to give you a better understanding of what Payless ShoeSource United States is. Okay, so here is the introduction to the case study. Payless ShoeSource, an American-based shoe company, once had over 3,500 locations in over 40 countries and were the largest footwear company or outlet in the United States. Today, we'll be focusing on the United States establishment of Payless ShoeSource. As Payless ShoeSource once started off as a small shoe store, it soon grew into a nationwide company through vigorous expansion by opening hundreds of stores. However, as the 21st century approached, they soon began to struggle and began efforts to reconstruct their company. Through the 2010s, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy twice in the span of less than 2 years. The first filing was in April 2017, and the second and final one was in February 2019. After the second bankruptcy in February 2019, they liquidated all of their stores and seized out their American operations. Payless, dropping the shoe source after they emerged from liquidation, the Chapter 11 bankruptcy, would soon emerge as an online seller for e-commerce and even opened their quote-unquote first store for the first time after the liquidation in hopes of reestablishing themselves as a well-known shoe company they once were for the past few decades. Okay, what is Payless ShoeSource USA if you do not know about it as a chain? So Payless ShoeSource, or Payless now, is an American-based company that specializes in selling discount shoes through e-commerce and one brick-and-mortar store in the United States for now. And we're talking about our present context, not our previous context, and internationally with, of course, more stores. For time and research purposes, I have limited my research to offer more rich, sophisticated information towards the rise, fall, and rise again of Payless by focusing on the American establishment of this company. With over 2,000 stores at the time, they liquidated all of their stores starting in 2019. Payless served and continued to serve low-income families with affordable shoes across the country compared to other retailers that don't specialize in their brands. And of course, just as a little flash forward here, retailers such as Walmart, Kmart, and Target began to catch up with their own footwear departments, and they strengthened their discount shoes, which competed against Payless shoe stores through the 2000 and 2010s, which began their demise. But you'll learn more about that as we go through the slides. Okay, and here we go with our small beginnings and growth for Payless. In 1956, two cousins, Louis and Shaul Pozes, opened their first self-service Payless national store in Topeka, Kansas, that sold budget footwear to consumers. The reason behind the self-service model is to hire less employees to reduce expenses, ultimately. By the end of the decade, Payless National expanded into Oklahoma, Texas, and Nebraska, while opening 12 new outlets during the time. The idea of budget footwear after the Second World War, alongside the baby boom of the 1950s, was a brilliant idea as to offer affordable shoes to all in a booming economy. As a result, Payless accumulated $6 million in sales by the early 1960s, from their dozens of stores with women's and children's shoes making up most of the sales. Payless National would soon go public in 1962 and change their company name to Volume Distributors through an influx of cash by an initial public offering. This allowed for Volume Distributors to open an average of 12 stores per year after they became public through the initial offering. Unfortunately, a tornado storm destroyed their company headquarters and warehouse located in, of course, Topeka, Kansas. However, they were able to rebuild quickly by opening new offices and rebuilding their warehouse. They also revitalized their new SKU system that was shortly in place before the storm in order to keep track of their inventory to correlate with the large influx of products they now have as a result to the growth. By 1967, Volume Distributors changed their name to Volume Shoe Corporation in order to reflect their market. And of course, if you guys didn't know, a SKU is a scannable code that you usually see on products in major retailers or grocery stores, Target, Walmart, Kmart, Sears, Kroger, Albertsons, etc. And this was a very effective way in order to keep inventory and track of what products were available. Of course, with the Blockbuster video that I did do and I did cover, we had Blockbuster start off with a SKU system and a manageable inventory system in order to keep track of all of the VHS tapes and other audio and visual recordings that practically made them better than other companies during the time period. So there was a technological advancement which helped to increase their supply ultimately overall. Okay, after the small beginnings, we have our more growth and rebranding of the company. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Volume Shoe Corporation purchased 8 smaller shoe companies, which totaled an additional 145 shoe stores for the company. During the beginning to the mid-1970s, Volume Shoe were immensely successful. They continued their span of additional store openings and grew their operations wider across the country. By 1975, Volume Distributors operated over 475 stores in 31 states that racked up almost $75 million in net sales. As a result of their growth, this made them the largest chain of family shoe stores in the United States. To ensure they were the largest chain, they made sure to hold on to style and quality through company-specific shoes that all customers deserve while keeping prices low in order to hold their spot as America's #1 discount footwear chain. Volume Shoe continued their growth with the expansion of malls across the United States. And of course, during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we see an increase in malls as we have highways built during the Eisenhower era, which had, people go out more often and buy cars. As a result, we see malls and stores such as Sears, Roebuck and Company, JCPenney, and other major retailers go into malls during this time period. And then Volume Shoes ultimately took off this offer and they started building stores in malls during this quote-unquote hype period to further increase their sales as a result of the trend. In 1978, Volume would change their company logo and storefronts to the now familiar Payless ShoeSource, while the corporate name remained Volume Shoe Corporation. Retail outlets now sported this new logo with the yellow, orange, and brown interiors that lasted until those storefronts closed in mid-2019 during the second liquidation. This helped customers feel comfortable while shopping and gave a warm feeling when visiting Payless ShoeSource outlets. And of course, going into the 21st century, it feels a little outdated because orange, yellow, and brown were the colors of the 1970s, 1980s if you do look closely at it. And it's like, wow, this is cool. And then you go into a Payless ShoeSource in the 2010s. I'm like, man, this is cheap. But that was the style back then. And the colors, in my opinion, really pop out. And it's pretty innovative, but going then you have to modernize and strategize your company going, advancing in the century. So who knows? Lewis and Chow Pozes soon retired in the early 1980s and were succeeded by Executive Vice President Harry Berger. Berger was later replaced by Richard Jalowski as President of Volume Shoe Distributors, who was the former Senior Vice President of Walmart. However, he would also soon leave as president in 1986. So going from small beginnings, we see them expand so much during this time period. And now we're going to go into a more in-depth growth with May department stores. And I'll give a little backstory after I read the slide. So we're going to go over May department stores era, even more rebranding and further expansion. So just to give you a little insight, May department stores was basically Macy's. They were a high-end retailer that didn't have a lot of stores, but they profited so much. I know when I used to live in Los Angeles, there was a May Company store on Fairfax and Wilshire. You could look up images of it. It was a huge store, sold high-end clothes, closed in the 1993, I believe the early 90s. And they were immensely popular. Even though they had little retail locations, they established themselves well market and a well customer base that they were wealthy. And the reason why May Company made so much money despite their limited retail stores is because they had several companies under their portfolio. A team in their executive office would go and explore companies that were up and coming and profitable, well, potentially profitable for their portfolio, so they would expand their market and of course have more money. So Payless ShoeSource was lucky enough to be one of those people under the monitor and prospective companies to purchase. In 1979, Volume Shoe Corporation was acquired by May Department Stores for a $160 million stock swap. As May Department Stores were a retail giant due to them owning 11 department and discount retail chains, this addition to their collection was applauded as a chain to further grow their brand. I mean, this was an excellent idea. Payless was expanding rapidly throughout the United States. They were the #1 family footwear chain, and adding them to their portfolio was a great idea. By the start of the 1980s, there were over 1,000 Payless outlets in the United States. Payless further expanded their chain in California as they acquired 66 Kobe shoe stores from Kobacker Company. Payless expanded internationally when they opened their new office in Taipei, as Chinese factories produce 80% of Payless's merchandise. As a result, the office became a subsidiary named Payless ShoeSource International. And in the 1980s, the reason why they expanded was because, it was said, in the 1980s, the Chinese governments or the Chinese officials, they wanted to replace their communist economy with more of a different market, and they invited American companies or international companies to build factories in China with, of course, a fee to the officials to, produce goods for cheaper than the United States. And of course, American companies such as Payless established office and factories in China to make their products for cheap so they could sell it for more than a profit. Of course, however, they did want to have the same quality in manufacturing to ensure that low to middle class families had cheap shoes, but they were at a good quality. But of course, going into the 2010s, that wasn't the same because they were cheap Velcro shoes, but back then it was a little better, or at least what I see. The rest of the 1980s and the 1990s were a strong time period for Payless at a rate of opening 200 stores per year. They officially changed their corporate name from Volume Shoes to Payless ShoeSource in 1991 due to the well-known name of Payless ShoeSource with the storefronts in malls and other individual stores as well. During the same year, they had over 3,250 stores compared to a mere 1,662 stores in 1985 as a result of vigorous expansion attempts from May department stores. Sales were at a staggering $1.5 billion during this period. Payless also introduced Payless Kids stores to focus more on children's shoes since they were a main factor that brought in income. And mind you, the majority of sales, as stated in the 50s and 60s, were women's and kids' shoes. And this is the same going into the 1990s, so they decided to do a spin-off brand, Payless Kids stores, which were usually attached to the main Payless ShoeSource stores to offer a specialized selection of kids stores. This is basically the same idea of Toys R Us and Babies R Us, to focus more on that brand, a store-in-a-store concept or individual stores, to focus primarily on making more profit from there. Although Payless continued to open more stores and earnings increased, this return on sales simply did not reflect their growth. They were slowing down during this time period. Many department stores wanted to vigorously expand. They were losing money during this time period and they wanted to expand their portfolio even more. They're becoming a burden on them, and as explained in the next slide, we'll cover the early struggles and transition into the 21st century that caused the decline in sales for many department stores to sell the company overall in the new business environment. So here we go. Struggles, reconstruction, and focus in the 21st century. As mentioned in the last slide, the return of sales that Payless ShoeSource has demonstrated in the 1990s did not reflect on how they used to perform when many department stores acquired them in the early 19th centuries going into the 80s. This is due to the increased competition of other discount chains such as Walmart and Kmart that affected Payless ShoeSource sales in the discount footwear market. Due to decreased sales in 1996, many department stores spun off Payless ShoeSource to shareholders. As a result, Payless is now an independent, publicly traded company with over 4,200 stores and over 750 Payless Kids outlets. However, due to the sale from May department stores, Payless decided to close or relocate 500 underperforming locations. In addition, Payless was now a continental brand, or all in 50 states, because they've opened their first outlet in Alaska in 1996. So go Payless. In the same year of 1996, Jolosky came back as president for Payless ShoeSource with Stephen J. Douglas, longtime May department stores employee, as chairman and CEO. After the management changes, closure/reallocation of stores, and independency for me, Payless would aggressively push to further expand and reconstruct their company for the 21st century. The next year, we will see Payless acquiring the struggling chain named or called Parade of Shoes. With 186 stores in 14 states, it kept Parade as a separate division to lower costs and to maintain their current systems and real estate. In 1999, Ken C. Hicks was named president of Payless ShoeSource and Jolosky was appointed as vice chairman. Ken focused on product development and Parade of Shoes to help their business focus for the 21st century. Payless also opened their first e-commerce site named Payless.com to offer discount shoes on the web. Additionally, Payless opened stores in Shopko stores. Sound familiar? We went over this in 1999 with 160 of their outlets opening in their stores by the end of 2000. During this period, they also posted a revenue of $2.73 billion and a net income of $136.5 million with nearly 4,500 stores, including 220 Parade of Shoes stores. Payless was in a great position after the independency from May. However, we would soon see, again, vigorous competition from chains such as Walmart, Target, and Kohl's replace Kmart because they were also struggling during that time period. Specialty shoe companies such as Foot Locker also began to gain traction against Payless. To deal with the issue, Duane Cantrell, Payless veteran, was named president in February 2002 and stores closed from both Payless and Parade. Even though these changes were in place, sales continued to fall from each year from 2001 to 2003, and same-store sales fell as well. In 2004, the brand decided on a major overhaul to plan their focus for the rest of the decade and beyond. All Parade stores closed in the same year due to them being underperforming, and hundreds of Payless ShoeSource and Payless Kid locations closed to help reduce expenses for the company. This resulted in their location decreasing from 4,700 from an all-time high of 5,100. Cantrell soon resigned as president. So now we soon see struggles in the company, frequent leadership changes, closure of stores, and just increased competition. So we really see where this Payless was declining overall. Continued struggles and bankruptcies in the late 2010s. After the major reconstruction plan of 2004, the company continued their efforts to change their vision in retail stores alongside the decline of the shopping mall during the and mission statement the following year. With these new strategies and remodels in place, Payless also changed their logo in 2006 in order to represent a more upscale modern company for the new footwear market. They continued to use that facade and interior logo of the old one, the brown, yellow, and orange. Some stores were remodeled, but most of them continued to have that look. In 2007, Payless ShoeSource acquired Stride Rights, which was basically a childhood for many people, their rival footwear company, and changed its name to Collective Brands Inc. due to Payless already operating under the name to show their existing brands owned. These added brands such as Airwalk and American Eagle were added to their existing lineup, among others, to offer more variety discounted shoes. In 2012, Collective Brands Inc. was purchased by Wolverine Worldwide, Blum Capital, and Golden Gate Capital for $1.32 billion. This sale was to help reconstruct their company as a result of continued fierce competition, both from e-commerce during the 2000s and 2010s. However, this came at a cost of heavy debt for Payless to pay off for their store sales and performance, as these were private companies. So leverage buyouts, we'd love to hear it during the time period. In 2014, Payless sold brands such as Airwalk to Authentic Brands Group to lay off assets to gain financial capital due to the continued struggles in the decade. However, the buyout and the selling of assets were not enough to save the company from eventual doom. In April 2017, Payless ShoeSource filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy as a result of the competition from other retail chains, e-commerce websites, and their heavy debt load they have been carrying since the buyout of the three firms back in 2012. Payless closed 400 stores in the United States and Puerto Rico and planned to slowly pay off their existing debt in order to restructure themselves out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They were able to do so in August 2017 while lifting up some of the weight from the private buyouts. Payless, a little less than 2 years since April 2017, would file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy once again on February 14, 2019, Valentine's Day. This time, all their stores would soon close for good. And here we go with the liquidation of Payless. As mentioned in the last slide, as a result of the company filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy again, Payless would liquidate all of their 2,100 U.S. stores and close their e-commerce website in the United States by the summer of 2019. By June 2019, Payless ShoeSource would have effectively and successfully liquidated all their stores in the United States while closing other locations internationally, such as Latin America and others. However, we would see an emergence of the company yet again soon after the bankruptcy under a different name. And this is our emergence as the e-commerce seller and reopening. On January 16, 2020, Payless ShoeSource emerged from bankruptcy yet again with hopes to relaunch their e-commerce site. On August 18, 2020, Payless successfully relaunched their website and dropped the ShoeSource from the name to simply say Payless. The company also hoped to open between 300 to 500 stores soon to help reconstruct their once great company to sell discount shoes yet again. Additionally, on March 8, 2021, Payless successfully opened their quote-unquote first store in the United States in Miami, Florida. Their new headquarters is now also stationed in Miami instead of their old quote headquarters, which were in Topeka, Kansas. In hopes from this location, Payless hopes to, as the last point states, serve the community again by offering discounted shoes and now apparel. And our conclusion for the PowerPoint presentation and the case study overall. Payless is an American footwear company that specializes in selling discounted shoes. Founded in Topeka, Kansas by two cousins named Louis and Chao Pozes, they expanded from the 1950s through the 1970s as a result of the baby boom of the 1950s and offering discounted shoes to families after the Second World War. Now Volume Shoe Corporation, they were bought out by May department stores in 1979 as a valuable asset and were vigorously expanded during the period with more store openings and different leadership positions. However, due to decreased sales as a result of increased competitions from their competitors, May spun off Payless ShoeSource as an independent company in 1996 and restructured the company to refocus their efforts to prepare for the 21st century. Payless continued to face increased competition and restructured once again through a vigorous attempt in 2004 by closing hundreds of stores and closing the Parade chain they acquired in the early 1990s. Additionally, they changed their logo in 2006 and acquired several assets to pump up their company to modernize their vision. Payless was later acquired by 3 equity firms in 2012 and, as a factor alongside competition and e-commerce sites, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy twice, respectively in April 2017 and February 2019. As a result, after the second bankruptcy, Payless ShoeSource closed all of their 2,100 U.S. locations by June 2019. Payless emerged from their second bankruptcy in August 2020 and reopened their e-commerce site under Payless, dropping the ShoeSource from their name. They also hope to open hundreds of stores during the span of multiple years, with their first step happening in March 2021 when they opened their first store in Miami, Florida. With hopes to serve the community again by offering discounted shoes of quality, Payless hopes for a bright future ahead of them. Okay, and that concludes our case study. I hope you did enjoy it. Payless, I always used to joke around with them since they used to sell Velcro shoes. They're a rip-off. Get it? Because Velcro is like rip off. And I used to always make that joke, and during the liquidation, their Airwalk shoes, they still used to sell them, were $60. I'm like, what? Payless is $60? They're supposed to be like $10 or $20. This is stupid. Yeah, they always bump up the prices beforehand, and then they just liquidate it, so it's still regular price. So what can you do? But yeah, hope to see Payless once rise, and if there are any updates to the company, I can always make them in the comments or do another video entirely providing an update to Payless, and hope for a bright future ahead of them. Right. So thank you for watching this case study. Hope to see you soon, maybe in a month, maybe in 2 weeks, who knows, depending on my class schedules and how everything goes. Hope you all stay safe and well, and take care. Bye-bye.